so good to be in Orange County. I worked here 8 years and lived here about 12 years. It's a wonderful place. You know, I've been in LA now for almost 6 years, and I must tell you that unlike Orange County, LA has more than one iconic building. Although personally, I like the Matterhorn a lot. One of my bosses is here, Director Jackie Walker is over there, one of the members of the board of directors. Good morning, Director. We are fortunate to have Mayor Garcetti, LA Mayor Garcetti, who also is the chair of the board of Los Angeles Metro. During his time on the board, about 14 months now, we've accomplished a few things. We have 5 rail lines under construction. Under his leadership, we've received 2 full funding grant agreements, a number of TIFIA loans. We're working on complete streets. We have a new bike sharing program. And I want you to know that the mayor within LA County has taken a great deal of focus on building consensus within LA County. That sounds kind of simple on one hand, but it isn't. It's a big county. There's as much regional competition between the sub-region and LA as there is sometimes between the counties. So I'm very pleased to be here with him. I want to introduce now to you Chair Eric Garcetti of LA Metro.
Thank you so much, Art, and a very good morning, everybody. A wonderful turnout. Great to see you all. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this, and thank you, Art, for your leadership. Thank you to Paul and the entire board, and thank you to the great staff of Mobility 21 and all of you who make this work. You know, we are all lucky enough to be living in the greatest region, metropolitan region, not just in the United States, but in my opinion, on the face of the earth. If you look at the attention of the world economy, if you look at the natural assets that we have here, we have probably the greatest raw material for progress and prosperity of any place on the face of the earth. But we are and should call ourselves the Western capital of the United States, the northern capital of Latin America, the eastern capital of the Pacific Rim. And if you look at the dynamism of the world economy, and the place that people continue to grow up from and come to, is certainly the Southern California region. It stands for innovation, it stands for creativity, the most diverse collection of cultures certainly that's ever been assembled in human history. These things converge here. So in certain ways I wanted to start with optimism because the problems that we face, the challenges that we have, come from a very good place. The reason why we have traffic is because so many people want to stay here and come here. I'm certainly not the mayor of a town that's struggling with its population cut in half or it's trying to get people to come here. We're trying to solve problems which reflect a quality of life we want to bring back to a region that continues to move forward. And certainly coming out of the deeper hole of the recession that we experienced than others, while we have a deeper hole to dig out of, we're coming out of it more quickly than the rest of the state, and the state is coming out of it more quickly than the rest of the country. Our job growth per capita in this state is top 5 in the country, number 1 in absolute numbers. In my own city, we've have 40,000 jobs just in the last year that we've had, a drop of 2% in our unemployment rate. And a certain optimism that I haven't felt since I was a teenager, growing up in Southern California, when the Olympics came here, when this was a place that was kind of the promised land. After a couple rocky decades when people looked to California and wondered whether that gold dream would still be alive, you all have done the work. All the way from the Inland Empire to the coast, from the border all the way up to the Central Valley area. We have now, I believe, a moment for us to come together and to lead as one region again. And I wanted to start my comments there, even though I've been asked to speak very specifically, obviously, about transportation, because it is our moment to recognize that, you know, Orange County stealing jobs from LA County or LA County taking them from Ventura County, or us looking at the competition that has often divided us is a really bad way forward. I, as mayor, the first thing that I did in my own county was to convene the 87 other mayors for the first time. We've never done that. To sit down and spend time to get to know each other, but also to spend time to listen to one another. To realize that when we act together, we are stronger. And we expanded that beyond just a single county. Recently, when Washington asked folks from different regions to apply for a manufacturing designation to be able to retool manufacturing, and we're seeing, you know, battery factories in Ohio, and we're seeing down south automotive innovation. Los Angeles area, the Southern California region, certainly was a manufacturing hotbed for many years. It's still the manufacturing capital of America. But we saw defense and aerospace, beginning to look to other places. So we put an application with Ventura County, Los Angeles, Orange, and San Diego counties that I brought together with our academic institutions to say it's time for us to look at the next generation, whether that's SpaceX and the way that people like Elon Musk are rethinking our space program, whether it's looking at the way that composite material manufacturing is changing. And when we acted together as a region, we won. Only 10% of the metro areas that applied got that manufacturing community designation from Washington. We got it successfully because we acted together. The same thing goes for transportation, and I couldn't ask for a more exciting time to be a leader alongside you in this region and in this country when it comes to transportation. And I'm really pleased that we're here today in Orange County, and thank you. I always love it coming to Anaheim. The last time I was here is when the Kings beat the Ducks and knocked them out of the Stanley Cup playoffs. So thank you to my Anaheim friends for that. And particular thanks to Tom Tate. I don't know if he's here, but as mayor of Anaheim, he placed the bet that he would clean the LA River when they lost, not if. And he did come up and cleaned up the river. And the LA River has never looked better. Thank you, Tom, for that. But the topic of the day here, transportation, you know, Orange County and Los Angeles, and then the other counties that border all of us, traffic doesn't care really where that line begins and ends. Economic development doesn't. Pollution doesn't. Public safety doesn't. It's not like, you know, a car stops suddenly because there's a county line or a city line, or a criminal doesn't think of crossing it to commit a crime. The regional approach isn't just something that makes sense. It is the only way for us to move forward. We have the assets that I mentioned, but we also have the problem that traffic has never been worse. It's probably the #1 concern for all of our constituents, for all of our friends and our coworkers. The billions of dollars that we lose every single year, the millions of hours that are wasted because we can't figure out a better way to move around. And we also are analyzing, I think, the causes of traffic better than we ever have before. The ways that housing is built away from job centers and needs to be consolidated. The way that the single passenger car today is such an inefficient way of getting around, something that we still need for a long time. But when you think about that 95% of the time a car is not driven, when you think that 94% of the space for cars, even in the peak of traffic, isn't filled with a car, and that 93% of the fuel we put into cars never gets to the tires, we can think of better ways now that the technological tools, the analysis, the ways that we can innovate are before us to think about moving forward. I think we're facing the most radical transformation probably if in a generation, if not of two, of the hardscape of the transportation landscape here. But we're also facing, I think, the most radical transformation of the way we think about transportation in our lifetimes. At least since the freeways changed the paradigm back then, the radical new paradigm of how we would get around the region. If you think about young people and you see, you know, the rite of passage that those of us who grew up in Southern California, turning 16, you couldn't wait to get your own car. You know, I've been foster parents as teenagers who, when they turn 16 and it reflects their peers, they don't really care as much about getting that license. Fewer and fewer of them want that. They embrace public transportation in a way that many of us did not, although, you know, I rode the bus every single day from 7 years old to 16. We are seeing people look at new modes of transportation, whether it's bikes and the tough work that has to be done on bike lanes, and continuing to put them out there, but being flexible enough about making sure that they work. About building out a transportation that links not only within counties, but between counties. The commuter rail options, the high-speed rail. There is a willingness, not a uniform plan, but a willingness that I haven't felt in a long time among Southern Californians to at least try and experiment. The hot lanes that we put on the 110 and the 10, which had the usual chorus of opposition that we face when we try to innovate, now has died down to hardly a ripple. In fact, other freeways are lining up saying we want that too. When we see the way that we go to voters time and time again, come so close in a 2/3 or get over the threshold for people saying, please, tax me to build out something better for both our roads and our transportation, we're feeling that paradigm change. People are, as I mentioned, embracing, in some cases, congestion pricing, ride sharing, public transit, and they get the importance of expanding mobility options, as well as doing better urban planning, so that as we build along these lines, we can tie our pollution reduction and our greenhouse gas reduction and our affordability and our transit along the places where we have mixed use development. No longer are we the Southern California of living in bubbles, whether that's our community, our county, our job, the place we shop, the place that we live, the place that we work. We're increasingly looking to integrate. And to me, that's a very exciting moment. So where do we go from here? And how are we leading? And I think the excitement that we feel here is mirrored when we look at ourselves from outside eyes in Washington. Certainly my conversations with my good friend, the Secretary of Transportation, Anthony Fox, who himself was a mayor in Charlotte. When they're looking for good news stories, they're calling this region. When there's extra money in Washington for the first time, we're not an afterthought, we're the first thought. And we've seen that people understand the connection with jobs, and that the top priorities that I have, certainly as a mayor, to increase our city services, to get more jobs, and to build out an infrastructure, that they aren't three separate categories, that they link with each other. That when we build out transportation, that means an economy moving forward. That when it's done, it helps the economy prosper. And that when we do that, city services are easier to provide and a better quality of life. In Los Angeles County right now, we're undertaking $50 billion of transportation improvements. Measure R in public transit is the biggest chunk of that, about $10 billion to our airport, and I look forward to one day you actually can take public transit all the way into our terminals, and we took a historic vote after 40 years of failure in doing that. We were able to do that in my first year in office, and I point out when people always ask me, what's the biggest surprise about being mayor? I said how easy some of the big things are, and how tough some of the little ones are. In other words, we can be bold and do bigger things than I think we imagine, but we have to also have the tenacity to change the small things that are standing in the way of that sort of progress. Our port, we're spending $1 million a day with Mayor Robert Garcia in Long Beach, looking at a new partnership between Long Beach and Los Angeles to really sell one port, because our competition isn't, again, Long Beach and LA together. Combined, that's 43% of all the goods that come by sea into the United States. I can go to a congressman in Maine, I can go to a congresswoman in Florida and let them know how many jobs are in their district out of America's ports here. Let's figure out a way to market together so that we win the business that otherwise would be up in the Bay Area, up in Seattle, up in Canada, or down in Mexico, so that we can keep that engine going. $50 billion is the biggest commitment that we've seen in a long time, and it's beginning to bear fruit. Next year, late next year, or the beginning of the following year, you'll be able to finally ride rail again from downtown Los Angeles to the ocean for the first time since the red car went defunct in 1950. Well, returning to the past, but we're doing it in a brave kind of next generation iteration, a next generation imagining of what can be, where we make sure at those stops that we have the bike racks and the shared bike. I'm pushing our MTA and others to think through transportation not just as multimodal, but as a commodity. I think it's not too far down the road when we will pull out our smartphones, not necessarily need to own a car in the world, have bought $100 of transportation, and depending where we are and what we need to do, we can take a shared bike out, we can get a taxi or a shared service like Lyft or Uber to pick us up, we can go take a car if we need it by ourselves, like a zip car that's parked in a convenient place near us, or you can get on transit, on rail, on Metrolink, on anything, all through the same app on your phone. In other words, you never have to stress out that you can get where you need to go. It's the opposite. Oh, I don't have to worry about parking. I don't have to think about the expense. I can get picked up soon, or move, or walk, or bike to where I need to go, because I know that that option is there, and the technology is in place. When we look at the generation that we are doing, not just here locally for the economy, but nationally, as I mentioned, whether it's the 15 million containers that are moving through our ports, a number that by 2030 we expect to double. The multimodal national freight system is a key to us. And we have to look also at the interconnectivity of our larger goods movement as well. We're modernizing our airport because we understand that LAX is critical to the entire region. But we're also looking creatively to my friends at the Inland Empire and the east part of the county to see what we can do to transfer Ontario to local ownership. Something that I think is an accident of history that Los Angeles owns an airport in Ontario. Has to be for a price that I can defend, but not one that I make $1 off of either. One that will allow those who are closest to an asset to be able to develop it best for our entire region as well. What's good for Ontario and the surrounding areas is good for my city, and vice versa. You have a stake in LAX being modernized, I have a stake in Ontario being strong. The work that we're doing to extend our rail network, the work that we are doing throughout the San Fernando Valley, and the advocacy. As a mayor of Los Angeles, it's just as important to me to see, for instance, our Gold Line get all the way out to Claremont as it is for me to launch a new light rail line in the San Fernando Valley. Even though I don't represent both places, I'm only mayor of one of them. And the reason why it is because I have people who live in my city who work out there, and vice versa, those who live out there who work in my city. I recently went to Mexico a couple months ago for a trade mission, and I brought people from the region with me. I know as mayor of Los Angeles, I hope you will take advantage of me in the way that I can open up doors sometimes for all of us. I can get a meeting with the president of Mexico, so that when a Pasadena company, again, a city I'm not the mayor of, is up as the final bidder to redo the Mexico City airport, or Rosemead company like Panda Express is going to look at opening 250 restaurants up in Mexico, with the food manufactured here in Southern California and exported to Mexico. By the way, that's, I think, how we're going to take over the world through orange chicken. I know that I can advocate for those entities there, and again, it will benefit my city and benefit this region. It's the same approach with transportation, and that's what I want you to hear most from us. There's a lot of details I'm not going to go into in this speech. I want to leave you with really a strong message, which is that our regional strength will be our strength for dollars, for planning, and for our economy. And that it is time for each of us to think of ourselves as a regional leader. We often have such demands. The organization that we chair, the chamber that we're heading, the city that we've been asked to lead, that we think I have to just fulfill those needs, and that's stressful enough. Without recognizing when we open those doors and we look to our left and we look to our right, that the strength we can bring to both our selfish needs and those entities as well as the larger interconnectivity will define what this region is able to do and how the world indeed looks at us. Whether it's Metrolink, which literally links us together, whether it's Orange County, which has its own initiative, and LA County, but those initiatives don't yet talk to each other about somebody who wants to cross our borders. Whether it's the way that we look at the planning of the area and the cap and trade dollars that will be available soon from Sacramento, and thinking very intelligently about advocating for those together and making sure that they go into the transportation programs, which are the biggest bang for the buck for what that money is supposed to go to, which is reducing global greenhouse gases. We need to make sure that we have a unified front. And we need to have a unified voice in helping this nation get back on track, quite literally. It used to be that our cities and counties in the 60s and 70s, when they were burning and facing issues of extreme poverty, would go to Washington, D.C., so that Washington could help save the cities. I fundamentally believe with the gridlock that we have now, with the failures that we face in Washington, that it is the cities and local governments and entities that will go to Washington to save Washington and to save this nation. Because for each of us right now, the frustration of partisan gridlock is unacceptable when it comes to the quality of life for our people. They need transportation bills not renewed on an emergency basis, but on a strategic basis again. If this country is going to compete with the world and attract investment and continue to drive people to be here in this place of dreams that brought us here or that raised us here, we need to make sure that we model what that means and that we come together across our partisan lines here, which I think we do remarkably well. And we have leaders in power from California on both sides of the aisle to say this is a California priority and this is an American priority, to rebuild our infrastructure. And at the state level, whether it's the sunsetting of P3 legislation at the state level before we've ever really done any successful P3s in 2016, we need to go to Sacramento with the same unified voice, saying it's time to experiment, it's time to innovate. We need our local transit agencies to think harder about how we get those things done. And we need to also be sure that the multimodal system that we all kind of know is out there, that we fail forward together, that we don't let our inability to experiment hold us back from finding the way that things work. Will there be failures? Sure. Will there be a bike lane that's the wrong place? Absolutely. Will we see maybe a hot lane that doesn't work? Absolutely. But if on balance we're the place that's pushing things forward, we will see greater successes, reduction of traffic, a quality of life that's improved, and a stronger economy for all of us. And finally, let me leave you with this note too. If we do that, I think it's one of the reasons I personally have supported the governor on high-speed rail. Obviously not at any cost, but at some cost. Because if we land these innovations here, just as we did with the aerospace industry 50, 60 years ago, this will be the hotbed of transportation innovation for the world. The companies that do that work, the manufacturing that we seek. I look forward to Los Angeles and the Southern California region being known as that place, just as it was known and is known as the center of entertainment industry, as we're here around Disney, as it's been known as the center of aerospace manufacturing. It's been known as the creative capital of the world, which we are. Let's bring that creativity to bear in our transportation, in the content we create, in the ridership experience that people have, in the rethinking of this landscape, so that we don't have to say, wow, that stuff was really cool on its own, but that I had 10 more minutes to spend with my daughter. I was able to make it to that date on time and fall in love with somebody who changed my life. I was able to go see a show in a different part of the region, and wow, wasn't that an incredible concert or play. At the end of the day, it's Aristotle who said that the city came into being to preserve life, but it exists for the good life. In other words, we came to towns way back when because we wanted to be safe, but that wasn't the end goal. The end goal was to find and to define what the good life meant for each one of us, to determine what that meant in a park, in a family, in a relationship, in a job, as an entrepreneur, as a government official, to find what the good life means. We cannot let transportation stand in the way of that. We have to transform transportation into being the way to it. So thank you to Mobility 21 for what you have done. I hope to be able to lead at the front of the line with you and also learn when we need to follow alongside you as well. Bring your ideas, take advantage of my time as mayor of the biggest city here, but also one that recognizes that we're just one part of an interlocked and interconnected region. Thank you for the work that you do. I look forward to a great decade together. Thank you so much.